Hi, this is Peggy Rojas, host of Viviendo una Vida en Balance. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Completely Serious, where we talk about sports and have fun with great guests. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Completely Serious. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello and welcome to Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. My name is Bryce Burge.
And I'm Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. Today we're going to talk about the UEFA Champions League draw, also the Mexico, American, and Canadian national team rosters, as well as some women's soccer.
All right, Your Soccer Passport is sponsored by Squadcast. As podcasters that deal with analysts and guests from around the world, being able to record remotely is key. Current industry standards rely heavily on internet connections, but Squadcast changes that with a simple browser-based tool that requires no additional software to install. The audio is recorded locally as a high-quality WAV file and then gets uploaded to the host's computer, allowing solid audio quality throughout. To get started with your remote podcasting recording experience, go to squadcast.fm for your 14-day free trial. You alluded to it with the women's soccer. Starting off this week, we're going to get back to a topic that we thought that we were going to be able to previously get to, and that was not the case. But based on recording time and when the show was released, we do have a day of broadcast release match in Sky Blue FC and the Chicago Red Stars in a game that has huge implications in the NWSL playoff hunt. Last week of the season, Red Stars are holding on to the final playoff spot, just 2 points ahead of the Utah Royals. Chicago also has a game in hand, and they have a game to play on Saturday against the Houston Dash. Utah plays North Carolina, who won the top seed weeks ago and are on coast mode. So let's go back to what's going to be tonight's game, essentially, between the Red Stars and Sky Blue FC. Does Chicago seal the deal and win tonight to take that last playoff spot, or will they draw or lose and give Utah hope?
I mean, it's all in their hands to get the result needed to kind of secure that spot. Sky Blue has been terrible this season. They have not won a game yet, it looks like. And they haven't won a game yet. They're only accumulated 6 points. I mean, it's there for them. They're probably already on vacation thinking about it. So this is the chance for Chicago to get the result and kind of give themselves that extra day, that extra game where they don't need a win. So it's all there for them to take it and kind of lock it up and get those 4 spots locked up. And if they win there, that puts them in a position in the final game of the season to potentially surpass the Portland Thorns if they're able to get 2 wins out of the last 2 games and the Thorns don't get a win against Seattle or get a result against the Reign. They could potentially get us in third. So there's something to play for them. So it's important for them to get the win today.
And I think that's a key point out of all of this is because, Chicago still has a chance to go and get that third spot, even though that it is unlikely. But they're playing Sky Blue FC, and out of all the news that have come out of the NWSL this year, it's probably unfortunate but true that the issues going on with Sky Blue FC and not being able to take care of their players with any kind of respect pretty much has been a huge storyline that has kind of marred the NWSL season. That said, Sky Blue drew in their last game with the Washington Spirit, who just got a whole bunch of U.S. national team players on that roster, and so they were able to get that point. This is their last game of the season for them, so they really have to be pushing. They do have another game, Sky Blue FC does, but this may be their best shot for a win, as Chicago, may overlook them at a potential matchup against Houston. Houston also looks like they're in the hunt, but they can't win any more tiebreakers based on the fact that they're a game. They don't have a game in hand like Chicago does. So even if the two teams tied, Houston wouldn't have the tiebreakers to beat them, and so they're already eliminated, or they wouldn't have enough to have the tiebreakers against Chicago and be able to jump Utah. So Houston's eliminated. But it is an interesting matchup because Chicago has done a good job on the ball this year. Their offense has been solid. Again, they're one of half the teams in the league that have a positive goal differential at +6, scoring 32 this year. And when you don't have those top, the top two teams right now in North Carolina and Seattle, they have a pretty good goals allowed marked against them too, only allowing 26 this season. So there's a lot of possibilities there for Chicago to hold on to that. And I think they will, purely because Sky Blue has struggled so much. I would, as a fan though, you want to see that extra drama because with at least a draw, because like at least that way Utah's got a chance. And I think Utah has a better shot of getting that 4th spot than I do if Portland gets the three, or Chicago passing Portland for the 3rd spot. And that's a big deal because that's the other big matchup this week, and that is between Seattle and Portland. Bryce Burge, Yvonne Sanchez Carrasco here on Your Soccer Passport. We're available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Yvonne, with the teams that look like they're destined to be the 3 seeds between Seattle and Portland, they will play each other if seeding remains the same. What can Portland do to possibly win this matchup on Saturday and jump over Seattle to get that 2nd spot?
They need when they play well, they get the ball out wide, they attack, and they play with purpose. I think there needs to be an urgency for Portland to get the victory or at least get a result, because if we're going to assume that Chicago wins, if they don't, the game today, if Portland doesn't win on Saturday, they could face North Carolina. North Carolina has been above and beyond the best team in this league by a mile compared to everybody else. I watched when they came up to Portland and played the Thorns, and they've been just fantastic all season, the way they attack and the way they get after you. And they recently just won a tournament in Europe, I believe, as well. And I think that should also play a factor that you want to avoid North Carolina as long as possible. So they can't just play for a result. They need to get the win, number one, to get home field against the Reign, Seattle, and to avoid North Carolina. So there's a lot to play for the last week of the season, regardless of the outcome of today. But especially with that result, you want to avoid North Carolina as long as possible, and you also want to get that home field to put yourself in a good position to make the finals.
And that's a huge aspect with home field advantage, especially for Portland, who has been struggling the last couple of weeks with international breaks. Multiple people like Tobin Heath, Christine Sinclair, Ana Sternogorovic have all been off and unavailable for Portland. And they struggled earlier in the season with international breaks too, and losing a lot of their players. So for them to get the win after bringing everybody back into Portland, they win this game, they can jump Seattle for that 2nd spot, get home field, and the NWSL title game will be held in Portland this year. They could potentially flip the script on the entire season and get home field advantage throughout in a very hardcore soccer market. The Thorns rivalry and the Reign rivalry, may not be as storied as other Portland-Seattle rivalries, but it is just as intense. And then to have a chance to win the title, that's going to be huge for the city of Portland. And I know that you're in that area, maybe not now with the holiday weekend, but looking at this whole scenario, Portland's got to be ready to come out and support the Thorns. And at least for you being in that area, do you think the Portland community will do so?
Oh, yeah. You go to the games, there's 15,000 people strong. The area behind the north goal, that's called the Army section, is always packed. I mean, it's a beautiful environment to be when you want to watch a game. And it's, Portland loves soccer, regardless if it's the Timbers or whether it's the Thorns, even locally with the University of Portland. they show up and they love watching soccer in the game, and they bring the energy for those environments, and it's a great time to watch them. So I would say if you ever are in the area, you have to catch a game. Providence Park is a beautiful stadium. Half of it is, was rebuilt when the Timbers went to the MLS, and the other half is this old baseball stadium structure that has a nice curve to it and is all made out of wood, and it's just really a unique experience to watch a soccer game. So, and the fans come out, and it's a great time. So you definitely enjoy it watching here, and the fans will come out for the game. Number one, it's a rivalry, and number two, they know the importance of the game and for the Thorns to win. So they come out, they know their soccer here in Portland when it comes to the women's game and the men's game and the game in general.
Sky Blue Red Stars will be tonight, Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern in Chicago. On Saturday, the Red Stars and Royals will be at 3:30 Eastern in Utah. The Portland-Seattle game will be on Friday night at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific, and that will be broadcast on Lifetime as well, so you can watch that around the country. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we'll hear from you about the UEFA Champions League draw. You're listening to Your Soccer Passport. Welcome back to Your Soccer Passport. We are on social media and would like to hear from you about all the topics that we discuss. Don't be afraid to interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Some of you have done that in regards to the UEFA Champions League draw. We posted those on the different platforms and got some responses, like Louise, who said on Instagram that Man City looking at Group F like a pack of hungry wolves. Zach Wolpoff, who we had on a couple of weeks ago on the show, added his thoughts on Facebook saying that Group C was the group of death. Also got a text from my buddy Drew, who doesn't like social media that much. That's why he's texting me. Said that Group A was going to be a very surprising, solid group as well. So why don't we use that as a jumping off point? Yvonne, who do you think is the group of death in the Champions League draw?
I think the group of death, there's a couple really good groups. Group B I really like with Barcelona, Inter Milan, PSV, and Tottenham. I think Group C is also a very tough group with Liverpool, Napoli, and PSG. I think probably Group C is more of a group of death because you can see any of those three teams, Liverpool, Napoli, or PSG, winning the group. With the other group, with Group B, I think it's a group of death because Barcelona will wrap up, will win the group, and then it's a battle for the second spot between Milan and Spurs, with PSV being, I don't think PSV has enough talent to get second, but they're good enough to ruin somebody's chances of getting second, if that makes sense.
You know, it does. I mean, Eindhoven, the Dutch champions, definitely have some possibilities, and they brought in some players on loan as well. That was in Group B. Group C, Red Star Belgrade, I think, has the same possibilities. I mean, when you look at what they can do and how they got to the title, and that they probably had some of the hardest qualification battles in terms of like individual matchups, maybe not on names that they had to go through, but in terms of like how hard that they had to fight through those matchups, they're going to be battle tested and ready to go. And honestly, drawing with Red Star Belgrade may be the difference between winning the group or not making it out. And so I think that's why Group C is considered like as good as Group B is. In Group B and Group A, I think are your next best groups. But Group C has that group of death twinge to it because there's no easy games. It's not like before where you would have like a throwaway team or a team that was struggling or something like that to come into a group, and then it was how many goals could you score against them. It's also about making sure that you have your due diligence to actually beat them and not just draw. And I think that's the difference between Belgrade and Eindhoven. Looking at some of the other groups, you look down in Group H and you see all the problems that Man United's been having. And also you see Cristiano Ronaldo now with Juventus. Valencia and Young Boys also in that group. That's got to be some really interesting dynamics, because if Valencia can somehow pass Man U and grab that second spot, or if Man U just doesn't get out of the group at all, you have to think about all the extra pressure that's on Mourinho right now being their manager. What other kind of drama-filled storylines are you seeing throughout the draws that could potentially bleed into the actual tournament here?
Yeah, I'll say one last thing about Group C. Playing at Red Stars is going to be very difficult for any of the other three teams. That environment is as hostile and uncomfortable as there is in Europe. So you make a good point with that about playing at them and losing points there. With Groups H, Valencia is going to be a tricky place to play at. The United struggled last year against the Spanish team with Sevilla. Valencia offers a lot of the same characteristics that Sevilla gave Man United last year when they knocked them out of the Champions League. So it's not a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Juve United. You have to look at Valencia, who do have a decent record in the Champions League when they play in it. So those are one of the things I look at. I think the teams that should be the happiest are Group E and Group F with Bayern in Group E and City in Group F, where they kind of worked out their way where they're just a step above everybody else. It's not as hard. Group G with Madrid also looks pretty solid for them, with Roma possibly giving them a run for their money. And I think Group D is the weakest one out of all of them, with Porto, Shakhtar, Lokomotiv Moscow, and Galatasaray. No real world-class teams there. But I think, so all eyes are going to be on Group A, B, and C with that. And then Group H with United, if Mourinho can't get out of that group, he'll be done, I think. He's already struggling a bit and has pressure on him 1 month into the EPL season. So getting off to a bad Champions League start will be – I don't think he'll be able to survive it, because he's already kind of wearing his time thin at United, where he doesn't have the same backing that he used to have and doesn't have that same luster that he used to have. And I think that's really important when it comes to the Champions League and what it means for these teams, not only prestige-wise, but financial-wise, making sure they get out of that group.
And one of the other things about that, though, is that some of the players have come up and talked about how, with the media focusing on the managerial aspects, they can kind of take the scapegoat route and not have to worry necessarily about getting called out for their play out on the field, which has been a struggle for a lot of the players for Man U this year. It is young, but you go into a tournament like this and it's already kind of a problem. I think the next issue, for them, is to just get out of the group stage and then see how it comes along. You did mention Group A. We haven't made mention of those teams, so we'll kind of wrap up the segment with them. Atletico Madrid, Dortmund, Club Brugge, and Monaco in that one. A Belgian, a German, a French, and a Spanish team all there. This one looks to be tougher than some of the other groups. What can we expect out of this one?
I think the most interesting matchup is going to be Atletico Dortmund, because both of them have grown the opposite reputations over the last 5 years, where Dortmund is this attacking offensive team with all this flair, the pressure that kind of that gave them a Champions League finals about 7 years ago. Atletico Madrid is this hard, no-nonsense, defensive-minded team that kind of wears you out. Those games are going to be fascinating to watch. Monaco had a nice run in Europe a couple of years ago. They won the league a couple of years ago. They've lost a lot of players over the last 2 years, but it's still, this is a bunch of really solid teams who all finish second in their leagues. So it's hard to see which team would win the group. But you're looking at very unique matchups that I can't wait to see when Atletico and Dortmund play, because I think you're getting these two opposite spectrum of styles they're going to clash with each other. I do see Atletico winning the group.
I do too. And it is kind of an interesting setup with that, because as much as Dortmund has their class and everything like that, Atletico Madrid has got a lot of World Cup players on their roster, has a lot of people that are ready to go and have experience on bigger stage. And you don't want to knock Dortmund and say that they don't have it either, but I just feel like that team's gonna be better when it comes to each aspect of it, and we'll see how it goes in the previews once they actually start playing. But right now, I think Group A is going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry. No, my last point. I think Atletico is going to learn from last year not making it out of the group. I think that's going to be a big factor for them this year, that they're going to learn from the mistakes last year of not making it out of the group, and they're going to be more disciplined when it comes to how they manage this group stage. This tricky group, but winnable group.
All right, the UEFA Champions League begins with Group B matchups on Tuesday, September 18th, as Barcelona hosts PSV Eindhoven and Tottenham faces off against Inter Milan. Quick note, all of Tottenham's matches for this one will be played at Wembley Stadium, from what it sounds like, based on stadium issues. So that will be an interesting thing to come about from that as well. Worldwide Headlines is next, followed by discussion on the U.S., Mexican, and Canadian rosters heading into the international break. You're listening to Your Soccer Passport on Public House Media. Time now for Worldwide Headlines here on Your Soccer Passport, a segment touching on some of the other big news from around the soccer world. FIFA announced their finalists for the Best Player Award. Multi-time winner of FIFA's The Best designation, Cristiano Ronaldo, leads the trio. World Cup Golden Boot winner Luka Modric and the Egyptian Liverpool star Mohamed Salah also were finalists. This is the first time that Lionel Messi has been left off the list since 2006, and only he and Ronaldo have won the award since 2008. Two Lyon players are fighting for the women's best players honors, as Norway's Ada Hegerberg of Norway and Germany's Jennifer Marozan were named a finalist. The Brazilian Marta, who plays with the NWSL's Orlando Pride, was the third finalist and the only person with a North American connection. Jamaica won the CONCACAF Women's Caribbean Cup with a 6-1 thrashing of Cuba on Sunday. The Reggae Girls dominated the competition, going a perfect 4-0 and outscoring their opponents 23-2. Today's Worldwide Headlines are brought to you by Public House Media Store, Envy Online Shop. The best way to promote your Soccer Passport and any other PHM shows is with t-shirts, mugs, and more, all available in the Store Envy shop. Visit publichousemedia.storeenvy.com. That's STORENVY.com. Welcome back to Your Soccer Passport. I'm Bryce Burge, Yvonne Sanchez-Carrasco. Also, follow us on Twitter at Yvonne Sanchez C90 and at that Bryce Burge. The U.S. and Mexico have announced their roster for the upcoming friendlies, including a match against each other in Nashville on September 11th. Interesting decisions for both teams on the roster. Lots of young players, lots of domestic growth players, but they don't have managers. Both teams have interim managers right now. So what do you expect that you can learn from this roster choice and from these matchups here in international play for the U.S. and Mexico?
I think if you're an optimist, you're looking to see the next wave of players that you hope will be in the cycle for the next 4 years to qualify to the next World Cup. With Mexico, you have 9 players who have never even gotten a cap for the Mexican national team who are hoping to make their debut. I believe there's only 8 players who played in the last World Cup for Mexico on this roster. So if you're looking to see the young players, it's the beginning of a new cycle, of a new 4-year cycle in international soccer. So you hope to see the early stages of that with the players and how they do in their national team shirts. On a tactical standpoint, it's harder to see what they're gonna do, because you do have 2 teams who don't have coaches, so you don't know what style they want to implement or their ideas of how they want to implement them. But you at least going to see players and how they play in the national team shirt, which I think is important.
Yeah, and you're starting to see some of the possibilities of getting these players together. On the Mexican side, most of the players, I think all but 4 of them, come from Liga MX, with a couple of them playing, in European leagues. On the other side, if you look at the United States, almost half of them are from the MLS, and the other ones are going through youth development programs in Europe, whether that be in Germany or some of the other. I think there's a couple of EPL guys in there as well. So it is interesting to see how the foreign influence pops up a little bit in the club game on this roster comparing the 2 teams. One thing that kind of caught me off guard a little bit is, well, not off guard per se, but, interesting in this matchup a little bit more is that there is no Christian Pulisic in this one. Instead, it's Tim Weah, the PSG midfielder. Instead, he's got 3 caps, 1 goal. So at least in terms of looking at who's there, also on the forward side for the U.S., Bobby Wood Zardes is back as well. So you do have some possibilities there of familiar faces, but how are you going to see the forwards and the potential future goal makers start to play off of each other on the American side?
I think depends, because Pulisic is going to be the focal point of whatever the next national team coach wants to do. He's going to kind of be the guy you're going to build a team around. They have Tim Weah as a midfielder on the roster for some reason, even though in PSG he does tend to play a little higher up. But I think you're going to see him kind of play behind Wood more and kind of more of a free role and find the gaps that Wood should try to open up for him, and look for Wood to kind of stretch the defense, and kind of allow Weah to find the gaps for him to attack behind him. And you just hope they kind of start clicking a little bit, and then when you add Pulisic to that, to kind of start pulling the strings even more. So I think with the U.S. national team, you want him to be a little more central than when he does play in Dortmund, where he's a little more outer wide, because he's more of a focal point for the national team. So I think these are the early building blocks of what the U.S. should hope to do once they have a new coach, and when they're planning on for the future for qualifying, is find places where you want Weah to succeed, and find where you kind of want Wood or whoever's going to play off of him to help him create gaps for him to attack, because he shows early signs of being a very talented player.
All that put together, not as many opportunities to learn in comparison between the U.S. and Mexico teams compared to the neighbors of the North in Canada. Canada still has League of Nations qualifiers to go through, which are a huge impact on the Gold Cup, a huge impact on your ability to really get set up positively in that top group to get some more quality games. Canada has to play their qualifiers. So instead of friendlies, like U.S. and Mexico, Canada's got a legitimate competition game against the U.S. Virgin Islands on September 9th. So with Canada's also released their roster, a lot of international influence, a lot of American influence as well involved with the MLS and teams like Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto. What can we learn from the Canadian roster as they look to put some extra stuff together and try to get in that top group of the League of Nations?
I think you're going to, if you're a Canadian fan, you kind of hope that they handle these games against lesser competition with ease, because you want a team. The problem with Canada has always been when they play outside of Canada, these Central American teams or these island teams, where they're like kind of uncomfortable in the situation, and that's when they tend to struggle. So you want them to be in these uncomfortable situations, like against the Virgin Island, where they're probably more talented and superior player by player, but the outside influences, the fields, the accommodations might even out the playing field. You want them to come out and succeed. And unlike a team like Mexico or USA, with Canada, it seems like it's more of a 8-year plan than a 4-year plan. Like, I think they want to make it at least to the Hex for this following qualifying, but their long term is the World Cup that they're going to co-host with US and Mexico. Where with Mexico and USA, it's 4-year cycle, and yeah, they do have kind of one eye into the 2026 World Cup, but it's expected for them to qualify for this next World Cup as well. So 2 different type of mindsets between 3 different nations who are all going to be co-hosting a World Cup in 8 years.
Absolutely. Some of the players from that Canadian squad to pay attention to: Alphonso Davies from the Whitecaps, Jay Chapman from Toronto FC. You've got a goalkeeper from Red Star Belgrade in Emilian Borja. So like there's some definite talent in this Canadian roster. Now it's just about putting it together, because I don't think that they've had as talented of a roster in previous years or previous qualifying. And, they've struggled on the road when they qualify. But right now, their only road qualifiers start off here against the U.S. Virgin Islands, and then it continues along at St. Kitts and Nevis in November. They play Dominica and French Guiana at home in October and March, respectively. And so I think we'll have a chance to see a lot more of this Canadian side, and how important it is to have them stronger before that World Cup, that shared World Cup, comes around.
Yeah, and I think, it's important for them. Like we talked about, this does have qualifying implements to the Gold Cup. It's important for them in 1 year, too, to finally have a good showing in the World Cup or in the Gold Cup, because they don't have to qualify in years past the way like Mexico and USA didn't have to qualify, because there's no North American qualifying for the Gold Cup. But they've always tend to struggle in those big-time environments. So it's important for them to get in so they can start playing more important games more frequently, which is, that helps over time to put yourself in these situations and adapt to playing quality opponents at a certain level.
Absolutely. Costa Rica, Honduras, Mexico, Panama, Trinidad and Tobago, and the U.S. are already in that top League of Nations format for being a part of the Hex in the World Cup qualifiers. So right now, it looks like Canada and Jamaica will be the 2 teams that will be able to make that jump unless something drastic happens. And who knows, there could be something. Guatemala is also having some issues, and they are not able to qualify based on FIFA suspension. So that will be the lineup for everything along the lines. Again, Canada at U.S. Virgin Islands on September 9th later on this week. And so that's been today's show. I think we've talked about everything so far. Remember to subscribe to Your Soccer Passport on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found. I'm Bryce Burge.
I'm Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. Shout out Canada, what up?
You've just listened to Your Soccer Passport on Public House Media.